Good morning, everyone. We're just going to wait for the participants to filter in. We'll be going in about a minute. So good morning. My name is Jim Sullivan. I am a HashiCorp solutions engineer based out of Seattle, and welcome to today's webinar on transitioning to Vault Enterprise from open source. Joining me today is a couple folks from Riverpoint Technology, Gabe Maentz, who director of solution architecture, and Brian Crossan, and I don't remember what Brian's title is, but I do know he knows more about Vault than everybody on the call. So hopefully that'll bode us well moving into the future. As you come in, if you have a question, there is a question and answer box available to you. Please enter those questions. If we don't answer them during the webinar, we will get back to them at the end of the webinar. With that, let's proceed. So our agenda today is we're going to talk about the product features and a little bit about the Vault adoption timeline. We're going to go through reasons why you would move to enterprise from open source, and then we're going to go through the migration considerations that are attached to that and follow up with some next steps for you moving forward. So Vault, just really quickly, just to remind everybody about what we're talking about. This is Vault. This is a foundation for cloud security. It's multi-platform. It focuses on secrets management, data encryption, and advanced data protection. Vault as a product is available free on a download. You can go to vaultproject.io to download it. And we have over 1 million people do that every month. Every month we handle a little over 2 trillion transactions in a Vault environment. And for people who have bought our enterprise product, we have well over 300 enterprise customers today. So for HashiCorp, we package our product in both open source and enterprise. And the way we look at it is, for an open source environment, it's really about the individual. It's really about how that individual is using and provides many of the core features. But as you move into the enterprise platform, we see the need for more collaboration. We see the need for support. And that is something that comes straight out of the enterprise platform. And it's then when we move into the broader organizational issues that we start to add additional collaboration and governance features that are part of the enterprise platform. And so for Vault, it looks a little bit like this. And you can go to that link on the bottom and see all the different modules and features that are available. But for open source, we have secrets management, we have credentials, we have identity and policy. All of those things are available to you today, and again, focused on the individual. When you move to the enterprise platform with Vault, we enable disaster recovery and multi-tenancy and monitoring, so that you can then start to build out the solution as it becomes more valuable and more your business relies on it more in that environment. And then in addition to the enterprise platform, we have additional modules, the multi-data center and scale, governance and policy, and advanced data protection. And I'll just go over those really quickly as we go through this. So here's the enterprise platform. This is the base. Disaster recovery, if you're in a data center, you want to be able to fail over easily. Disaster recovery enables you to do that. Monitoring is the next piece. This is ability to push data or have data pulled from Splunk and be able to monitor what's going on in the Vault environment. And then finally, namespaces, where you can have multi-tenancy, where you can have separations between groups, Oftentimes we'll see people use that to do, say, the developer and the QA and the prod each have their own namespaces so you don't get collision moving forward. That's the base platform. And then as we move into the applications, into the, the data center, the modules that we add in, we have the multi-data center and scale module. And this enables replication, so read replicas, and this is for scaling. This is the ability to be in multiple data centers, potentially around the world, and enable you to have a higher read performance for those environments. The other piece that's in there is something that's called path filters, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But this is to enable you to control what secrets get replicated and how they get replicated throughout your international environment. The next module that we have is governance and policy, and this is where you're able to start to add some governance and policy as code. So in addition to being able to use an HSM to do auto unseal or provide FIPS 140 support, we also offer multi-factor authentication if you want to have multi-factor authentication with a secret, control group so you can control who gets to go where. Sentinel comes into the play here where you can have the policies as code. And entropy augmentation, particularly using a HSM, where you can actually enhance the entropy of the crypto thing that everybody knows about. Apparently, I have not had enough coffee today. So that's the governance and policy module. And then the final policy is advanced data protection. This is where we have support for the key management interoperability protocol and for transform, which enables you to do format preserving encryption. And so both of these products are used a lot by our customers, and many times this is a reason why people migrate. So support is that other key element. A lot of customers, as they move through their Vault journey, realize that they need help, they need support. And if you're using the open source today, while there are some support channels, they're very much ad hoc. You can go into a discussion group, you can check online. There's lots of people who know about Vault and are able to help you. But if you want official support from HashiCorp, you need to buy the Enterprise Edition. And these are the different levels of support. Oftentimes we see customers start with silver and then move to gold. It depends on how you're using the product. If the business will go down, if Vault goes down, you probably want to have a Sev1 response of more than 4 business hours. So that's kind of where we see that dividing line. So when we look at customers who have adopted Vault over time, this is kind of the path that we see happens to these individuals. They start off, they have some secrets, they got to store them, they put them somewhere. And then they soon realize that this is secret sprawl. You put secrets in a repo, and all of a sudden that repo gets shared, and the next thing you know, your credentials are out on the internet. And so you need to have some sort of management solution. You see Vault, you download it, and away you go. And you start to use Vault as part of your environment within your team, within your application. You've got your secrets, but now other people in the organization are starting to use it. They see what you've done. They want to be able to store more secrets. You need to want to handle credentials. You start to expand your use of Vault. This generally leads to someone in IT agreeing, saying, hey, we'll manage that for you. You don't have to, you can focus on your needs. But now the issues of, okay, who's going to support us? What about these extra features? And that leads you into enterprise. And so some of the things that cause people to move along this path and are things like centralized management and oversight that need to have somebody responsible for that environment besides just the individual developer. And so we see this as people move from this sort of ad hoc adoption. Oftentimes we will go into account and we'll see that, it's not just one person using Vault, it's 10 groups using Vault. And now you want to have some control around that. You want to improve your security and be able to monitor and manage that environment. And that's oftentimes a very strong movement to go from the open source into enterprise. The next piece is particularly in some industries like healthcare or finance, you need to have FIPS compliant. And so having that FIPS 140-2 compliance is important. And that's, again, as we saw, that's a governance and policy feature. So again, that's a module you would need within the enterprise environment. Another thing we see a lot of customers worried about is disaster recovery. If business continuity is important to you and Vault is a key part of your applications that run your business, then if there's a problem in a data center, if there's a problem in a AWS or Azure region, you want to be able to manage that. And so disaster recovery is part of that base environment. Now, one of the things that's interesting here is many customers will think, well, I can build that out. And we call this scaffolding. All right, you can go and you can build a disaster recovery that kind of works. Well, a disaster recovery that kind of works isn't disaster recovery. It's just a problem when you have a problem. And so having supported disaster recovery is very important for many of our customers out there today. Next is scaling. So when you're using Vault, and there's all, we have a lot of customers who are doing, not just tens, but millions of transactions a month. They're going to want to have it to be able to scale, and in particular scale around reads. Most of Vault's interactions are usually a read. I need to read the secret. I need to read these credentials, and being able to scale that out for your enterprise is important. The OSS version really can only scale vertically, and so there's a cost attached to that. And so by enabling both single and multi-site scaling with performance replicas, you can now manage that across smaller instances and across a broader space. So now you get, you can have performance instances that are closer to people. You can be in multi-regions and multi-continent. And at that point in time, the path filters come into play, because if you had a secret in Europe and you're not allowed to take that out of Europe because of GDPR, for example, that's an example where you want to have those path filters. Again, this is something that we see customers doing as they start to deploy Vault. They need these features, and this is an enterprise module. Encryption at rest. And so being able to encrypt this data, and in particular using the key management interoperability protocol, a lot of customers will use us in that environment. And one of the reasons they do this is that they may have KMIP solutions from multiple vendors. Every database vendor probably has something similar to this. Every storage vendor has something similar to this. And so now they have multiple tools doing the same thing. If you leverage Vault in this environment, you now have a single point. You now have a single thing to manage, to learn, to know. I saw an interesting stat the other day that, every additional tool adds about 4 to 10 hours of just validating that tool. Not to say the knowledge need to know this is how it works in this tool, this is how it works in that tool. You centralize it by going with a single solution from HashiCorp. And then finally, this format preserving encryption, which is part of the transform. This is actually a really cool feature that we came out a few months back, and it's one of my favorite features of Vault. It preserves the field limitations of your environment. So if you have an older database, or you have a solution where a credit card field is stored in there, and so that field is of 16 digits. That's how big, that's what a credit card looks like. We can all probably recite a credit card off the top of our heads right now. Well, if you encrypt that using traditional encryption, you will get a multi-string alphabetic character that will not fit in 16 digits. But if you use the transform feature within Vault, you have a format preserving encryption, which will return a 16-digit string. And so you can store that in that existing data. And so this enables you to store it in place. It reduces your exposure, because now if someone gets access to your database, they still don't have access to the PII information that's in there. It's protected because it's encrypted separately. And so we're seeing a lot of pickup on this, because it makes it easy now to share sets of data and know that the important data, the data that you can be fined for exposing, is actually encrypted and encrypted safely. And so this, adoption timeline, as people go through it, they get the need to say, hey, I want to have enterprise. And at this point in time, they realize, but I have this entire Vault infrastructure with me today. What am I going to do about it? And Gabe, you have customers who do this all the time. How do you help them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the great things of the HashiCorp product suite is you can go download Vault or Terraform or Council or any of their tools and get started with it, right? And then as you start to see some of these kind of pain points, you really are starting to work towards making this really enterprise ready with all of these feature sets, such as disaster recovery and replication, performance, scaling. There's a kind of a method that we can go forward with so that you can take your open source investment and now start to realize some of the features within enterprise. So what I wanted to take a little bit of time with here for the second half of the webinar, if you will, is to maybe just give you some thoughts and actually some kind of an approach, if you will, for how you would take an open source Vault instance or cluster and move into an enterprise license and start to use those feature sets. So just a quick disclaimer on this, right? Vault typically becomes a mission critical service that you're going to be using. So you know, I'm gonna give you some ideas about an approach here, things that we've done to work with customers on. But that never forgoes, like, you know, ask the professionals who do this work, right? Whether it be somebody from Riverpoint Technology like ourselves or an extension of the HashiCorp implementation services team. It probably makes sense to put this kind of work under, you know, some type of documented statement of work to make sure that the data itself is going to come out of the other end without any problems. But with that said, it's a relatively straightforward kind of approach here. So for those who aren't familiar, Vault is broken down into kind of the control layer and then also a data layer. So it needs what is called a storage backend, right? And there are really two storage backends that are supported by Vault Enterprise. One is Console and one is integrated storage. And integrated storage came out, I believe, GA in Vault 1.4. So we have to take the data from whichever backend you're currently using in your open source implementation and move it to one of the supported backends that Vault Enterprise supports, right? So one is a data migration or a data copy to some degree. And then the second is to actually, there's a separate binary for Vault Enterprise. So we have to replace or maneuver from the open source binary to a Vault Enterprise binary. We have a couple of different scenarios on how to do that with some pros and cons of each. And then once the data is over and the binary is in place and the license has been applied, you can start to leverage all of the Vault Enterprise features, build out your disaster recovery clusters, your performance replica clusters. If you're working in VMware or AWS or Azure or GCP, you can start to use that replication to get those credentials, get those secrets, all of that secret engine goodness, if you will, from Vault to those places. So let's talk about those steps in the approach. Of course, anytime you're going to make a maneuver, you should be prepared for it, right? This is kind of like my Terraform plan, if you will, for Vault preparation for moving in from open source to enterprise. One is make sure you have a good backup of your data. Whatever your backup system pieces or components are for that, and different backends have different types of snapshotting or backup capabilities. Take an existing inventory. This is a good time to make sure that your unseal keys and are available and that you can unseal Vault, because we will actually be taking Vault offline for this maneuver, and so we're going to have to unseal it if you're not using an auto unseal feature. Also a good time to take inventory of any auth methods or secret engines, any permissions in terms of ACLs, any other Vault related configuration. It's best practice to actually define that in code, right? So if you're using Terraform possibly to manage your Vault open source environment, there is a Vault provider for Terraform. So you can actually codify some of this work. But once again, take a proper prep in terms of understanding kind of the inventory you're going to move. And then ultimately decide on which backend you're going to use, right? Is it one of two supported, the console or integrated storage? And you can learn about both of those features. I've provided a link on that. And then ultimately we're going to create a configuration script, which is going to actually, it's like 10 lines of HCL code that's going to simply specify where our source and destination is going to be, so that we can actually grab that data, move it over to our enterprise supported storage backend, and get Vault Enterprise up and running. So let's talk about that storage backend kind of migration or data copy. All right, so the scenario I'm going to use here is a Vault open source instance with a DynamoDB backend, okay, completely open source. So one of the first steps we have to do is to make sure that we get onto a supported backend for Vault. In this case, we're going to look at Council. We're actually going to put Council Agent onto our Vault server, and Council Agent is a means to be able to establish that connection in a future step to start to use to connect to that data. All right, and we're going to issue a very simple Vault operator command, which is Vault operator migrate, and we are going to, as a parameter, specify the migration configuration to move our data, in this case, from the DynamoDB storage backend to a Council agent communication. So hopefully you can see what that looks like. It's about 10 lines of code. It's just pretty much saying, here's the source with some various attributes so that we can connect to it. And then here's our destination. And then we're going to go ahead and perform our operator migrate command. And this will move the data from Vault open source Dynamo backend to a supported Vault Enterprise backend. So that's the data component. Once again, we also have to make sure that we get the binaries upgraded to Enterprise. And there's a couple of ways to do this. So here's an example of an in-place upgrade. So in this case, you know, our current state is we have a Vault open source, once again with our DynamoDB backend. We've copied the data now to a Council backend, but we still need to attach to that new backend as well as upgrade our binaries. So the way to do that is to simply go ahead, and this would be if you wanted to keep the same server and keep the same place where Vault is running, you can simply go ahead and take the Vault open source binary and replace it with the Vault Enterprise binary. The really nice thing about the HashiCorp product suite is all of this goodness is really in kind of a single binary, right? This is consistent across their entire ecosystem. So a simple replacement of that binary is relatively a straightforward exercise. And then we would go ahead and make sure that the Council agent is also installed inside that server. And ultimately, what will come of that is our goal state would be now we have a Vault Enterprise, we have a Vault node, which has the Enterprise binary. It's got the Council agent component, once again, just a single binary for Council, but we're still connected to the Dynamo database backend. All right, we have not yet moved to the new source of data for Enterprise support. So the next step would be then to attach to that backend. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and once again, if we haven't performed the copy at this point, you certainly can do that, or you could do that ahead of time. And then we're going to then replace the Vault migration, the Vault configuration to say that we want our storage backend now to reference Council agent. And so what that looks like is it's really just something within the Vault command line or the Vault configuration where we change our backend. Now we will have a Vault cluster with Enterprise binary going into via our Council agent to connect to our scalable distributed storage Enterprise supported server cluster, in this case Council. Once the mechanics of that are complete, then we can start Vault back up. We can, of course, anytime Vault needs to be restarted, we need to make sure we can unseal Vault. So whether you're using an HSM or an auto unseal or just Shamir secret keys, we have to provide those keys so that Vault can be unsealed. There is also a time when we need to apply the Enterprise license key. So in addition to the Enterprise binary needing to be in place, we also have to apply a license key. And there is a timer on this that you have to do this within about 30 minutes of when the service comes online. And we can always reset that timer if we need to, but you need to just re-perform steps, the vault service and unseal components. But you have a 30-minute kind of window to apply that enterprise key. And then go ahead and look at your inventory and perform your tests, right? And make sure now that you've successfully migrated from open source to enterprise. So a couple of considerations in terms of in-place upgrades. Why these are popular because, you know, it's relatively straightforward to change a binary out. We can do one active Vault node at any given time. If you've already got a server with an IP and a DNS entry for it and all of those things, it's all on the same server. So there's this idea of a conflict is really kind of avoided. There are a couple things to consider though on the negative side, if you will, is that if there are problems, then there are a couple things that manually need to be rolled back, right? And we need to, you know, always at risk of having a little bit of additional downtime if anything in this whole process fails, right? If somebody forgets to bring the auto unseal key, the Shamir keys, or there's a permissions issue or what have you, to get to this new place, it might be a little bit of additional downtime. So let's look at another option. All right. So in this case, we're going to migrate not only to migrate the data to a new enterprise storage backend, but we're going to also migrate Vault itself to an entirely new cluster. So in this scenario, the current state is our open source cluster. It's talking to our Dynamo backend. And the goal state in this case would be to have enterprise binaries, which are completely licensed, leveraging Council Agent to talk to our Council server backend. Timeline for this approach would be same as the previous, you know, migrate your storage, use that Vault operator migrate command, get the data moved over into a Council cluster, stop Vault. So we don't want to have Vault up and running while we're bringing the new cluster online, right? So trying to avoid those conflicts. So stop the open source Vault service. Launch the Vault enterprise cluster. So this is a relatively, you know, this could be some additional servers. You can have one or multiple nodes stood up. And in that, those would all have the Vault enterprise binary loaded on them. We would then auto unseal that Vault enterprise cluster, once again, apply the license key and test the functionality. In this case, the Vault enterprise cluster is actually already, is already connected now to the storage backend. And so this becomes more of a migration rather than an in-place type upgrade. So a couple of pros and cons, right? This is really nice because there's a relatively quick cutover to go from one set of servers and services to the enterprise. The Vault open source cluster remains unchanged, which gives us a really nice kind of backup plan to be able to connect back in case there were problems during that testing scenario, our testing phase. But one thing you have to be careful of is that you're bringing up two pieces of Vault, and so there could be a conflict. So it's very important, once the migration is successful, to disable the service, the Vault service on the open source nodes, and just make sure that that doesn't somehow get re-enabled on a restart or something like that. And now you kind of have a, you know, bit of a split brain scenario where you've got two versions of Vault and systems looking for that. There are also, it would be a need if you're opening up a new kind of instance and you have an FQDN or a DNS record or something that needs to now point to the new Vault server, then you have to make sure that any tools that are referencing that name are cut over as well. So just a couple of things to be aware of in this migration to a new Vault cluster scenario. And then finally, I do want to touch on integrated storage. So integrated storage was released in Vault 1.4, and it is another enterprise supported backend that allows for you to follow a very similar process, right? But we don't have to now manage a number of council nodes as a separate kind of cluster. So in this case, we're going to move from our open source version of Vault, once again on our Dynamo backend, now using to Vault Enterprise. And same command. This is, you can see kind of the theme here, right? Where we're getting the data moved over into the enterprise supported backend, getting that data copied, and we're going to bring up a single active node within Vault. And now that the data is all over, we have a single active node, but of course that's not an enterprise ready environment. We want to definitely build in HA, high availability, into our Vault Enterprise cluster. So once the migration is complete, we will then stand up 2 additional nodes for a Vault Enterprise. So these are 2 additional servers that are running Vault Enterprise binaries, and add them to the cluster. Because there's no console storage backend in this case, we can actually issue a Vault operator raft join command, which will then take these 2 standby nodes, have it communicate with the active node, and ultimately complete our setup now with a Vault Enterprise cluster with integrated storage. And then integrated storage takes care of replicating that data between all of the nodes, the active and the standby nodes, and migration is complete. So now that you've got a little bit of a know-how on open source and an approach to moving from open source to some of the enterprise features, whether those be with a integrated storage or a console backend, what's next? So I work for a company called Riverpoint Technology. We're a practitioner-led system integrator and reseller for HashiCorp, also members of their virtual bench, which means that we do implementations like this all the time for people, right? We're also HashiCorp's North American training partner. So we believe that educating people on how these things work is an important part of ultimately being successful. We're certified, and we can help people all the way from really the enablement, design, implementation, deployment, and ultimately day 2 services. We have a lot of smart people in our group. And you can see the HashiCorp badges that are out there, right? Everything from Vault experts and associates to Council and Terraform. We have a lot of love for that, for the HashiCorp product suite, and have been very successful with lots of enterprises in really doing this at scale and doing this in an enterprise way, right? Open source is a great way to get the beginnings of this journey started. But when you start to operate this at scale, really at enterprise class, this is where we can help. 2 ways that I'll give you that we can help to get started. We offer many different services around the HashiCorp suite. 2 that I wanted to highlight in the webinar today. One is our Vault Jumpstart service. So this is all about accelerating the adoption of Vault within your environment, right? Looking at what you have in terms of open source, getting Vault stood up, getting that stood up to not only HashiCorp's best practices, but because we've actually done a lot of these implementations at enterprise scale, we have our own set of best practices that we follow in our methodology. So enabling, educating, ultimately working with your team to design the security posture that you're looking to deploy, whether that be in an on-prem, multi-cloud kind of deployment, and then ultimately implementing that for your success. So that's our Jumpstart program. We're also offering a health check program. So perhaps you're already a Vault Enterprise customer, and maybe you already have some, or maybe you're already stood up some open source, and you're just looking to do kind of a baseline. Am I doing this the right way? What are other companies doing? What are some of the best practices around this? What's the best methodology for scaling this? Now I've been successful in running it in my AWS environment, but now I've got Azure starting to spin up, and I want to maybe bring some of this into even in my own local data center. we offer a health check, which will help you adopt those, kind of do an evaluation of those best practices, baseline you against some of the other implementations that we've done, and really give you kind of a run book, if you will, to walk away from for how to implement and use, maybe shore some gaps up within your enterprise deployment. So the Jumpstart program, the health check program, once again, Vault is a mission critical application, right? It's got all your secrets in it. This is not something you want to just kind of trust to chance. Leverage us we've taken this journey with many customers before. Love to take it with you as well. So, Catherine, I think we have some time for Q&A.
Yes, we sure do. Hi, everybody. This is Catherine Burkhardt. I'm partner marketing manager at HashiCorp, and I am manning the control, so to speak. And so I have a couple of questions here. One just came in, so let me pull that up, and let me start with the earliest ones. Okay, so Andrew wants to know, trying to understand the value of adopting Vault if the organization has mature, repeatable practices for ARM template deployed Azure key vaults.
Yeah. Andrew, thanks for the question. I appreciate that. Yeah, there's a number of different services that are out there. Key Vault, AWS has a secret, engine, secret manager, Psychotic, CyberArk. There's a number of different ones there. I guess what I'm finding in these implementations is that the sprawl of all of these systems and all of these secrets into many of these disparate tools is becoming a problem. I'd even introduce, CI/CD pipelines, right? Your Jenkins and GitHubs and GitLabs and of the world. There's going to be secrets that are in there. So what I'm seeing in my customer base is that there's this need to centrally manage all of this. And one of the things that you'll find in the HashiCorp suite is that the HashiCorp team is really focused on the workflow of these. And so it sounds like you've got a great workflow with your ARM templates, but I would encourage you to think a little bit forward, right? When inevitably, you've got a great solution for Azure, but maybe you're going to start to have applications working in other clouds, maybe other regions, maybe even within your own on-data center premise or data center footprint. And what I like about the Vault product is that we have now a consistent workflow, centralized, fully audited, fully managed, best in breed in this secrets management landscape that is multi-cloud aware, multi-platform aware. So, Jim, I don't know if you had anything else to touch on.
I think that's, a really good summary of just the reality that even though, you may have made a decision for Azure or AWS or GCP or whatever, you will be multi-cloud because you probably have systems of records that are on-prem, and that's just another cloud. And so having multiple tools in that environment just adds complexity. And that's really one of the core values of HashiCorp products is that we are multi-cloud. We're enabling you to use the same tool no matter where you go.
Thank you very much. I've got another one here. And again, I invite folks, if you want to go ahead and type any questions, there's two spots, either the chat box or the Q&A. You can find if you mouse over your screen at the bottom, you can type in there. But I have a couple here already that folks have sent in. So here's a question. If we use unsealed keys for Vault, would we use the same keys on the new cluster?
Oh, yeah.
Gabe or Jim?
Yeah, great question. I can take that, Jim. So Vault requires this concept of, for those who aren't aware of sealing. So everything within Vault is behind an encryption barrier, right? Any call into Vault, any storage of the actual secrets themselves are all behind an encryption barrier. And in order to kind of be able to pass through that barrier, we need to be able to have an encryption key to unencrypt that barrier. And that unencryption key is actually never exposed outside of Vault. there's actually a master key which has the ability to unencrypt that. And that is actually dispersed. So no single person has all the keys to the proverbial kingdom here, right? And so those keys are typically called auto unsealed keys or unsealed keys. Now there's a way to automate that as well. But actually, to answer the question, those keys, when you perform the migration, will be the same keys because the encryption barrier has not changed, right? It still needs to be unencrypted. In fact, in that preparation step that we shared with you, it's very important that you maybe go through the exercise of unsealing your vault and making sure that the keys work, or you know, that's all part of kind of this disaster recovery scenario as well. Because if you don't have the keys, then we can't unencrypt the data. Making sure that those auto unseal keys are a part of your setup process, your planning process, and then ultimately, yes, after the migration, you'll be using those same set of keys.
Yeah. And the thing I'll add and just reinforce, there is no way, if you lose your unsealed keys and vault seals, we can't help you. It doesn't matter what level of support you have, because those, you know, that cryptographic barrier is now sealed and you can't get past it. And we do have customers who, through lack of effective controls, have lost those keys. And the answer has been, oh, man, wish I could help you.
Yeah, there are some auto, you know, enterprise features like HSM support and auto unseal support, which will definitely take, you know, having the burden of distributing those keys across a number of people, right? We in essence move that over to like a hardware security device, or there's services in each of the cloud providers. But yeah, those keys are critical.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, here's I've got two more questions in there. They're related. So we'll start off with this. We were asked, does Vault Enterprise require a license?
And yes, it does. So I am paid by HashiCorp. The way I get paid is by you buying licenses. And so, yeah, so you license Vault, you license on a per client basis. Clients can be users or machines, and we have some really good information about that, just came out recently. But you know, you would purchase that. Gabe talked about the need to license the enterprise binary before 30 minutes, and that's important. So there's a time frame there. You can do it off the command line or do it through the UI interface. Either way works. But once you've licensed that, then all of the features you have are available to you. And there's a second question there?
Yes, thank you. Yes, one last question is, when I'm moving to Vault Enterprise, this is how I was saying they were tied in. When I'm moving to Vault Enterprise, is console also licensed? That's how I was saying they were connected there.
Yes. So when you purchase Vault Enterprise, we will provide you these console licenses for that Vault environment. It's specifically for that. It's not all of a sudden, hey, I can run console everywhere, but it's to enable you to use console as the backend storage if you so desire. I don't know, Gabe, how much are you seeing people pick up on the integrated storage these days?
Yeah, it's a relatively new feature, so I think there's just always a little bit of hesitation in something new, right? So, but I really like the vision there, is the kind of simplicity of you know, just introducing a node and having the storage component kind of replicate through that. There are some snapshotting and some little idiosyncrasies that maybe some enterprises wouldn't be quite comfortable yet with, but you know, HashiCorp Digital's next week. I'm kind of got my ear for what's going to be the latest and greatest stuff coming out. So.
And I can't say anything because we're being recorded and I'll be beaten.
Right. Yeah, that being said, you're exactly right. I love the teaser. Thank you, Gabe. We do have HashiCorp Digital next week, and we will be making some exciting announcements. And I think this audience will be interested to hear those announcements. So thank you for teeing that up, Gabe. I do have one more question here. Lena asked can it accommodate both symmetric and asymmetric keys?
Gabe, you want to answer that?
So there's lots of different keys within Vault. So I want to make sure I'm talking about the right one. So Vault actually has what's called a transit secret engine. So kind of the building blocks of Vault is what's called a secrets engine, right? And there's many different secrets engines. There's everything from just a static, they call a KV secrets engine, to dynamic secrets engines. And there's one in particular when it comes to encryption called the transit secrets engine. And so the transit secret engine allows you to kind of run encryption as a service, utilize Vault to perform encryption as a service. There's a list, I'll have to pull up the website, of all of the different key types that are supported there. You know, all of the most common ones. I don't recall which, I believe there's a mix of both asymmetric and symmetric keys on that list, but I'd have to bring up the list to know exactly what's supported at this time.
Yeah, and that mix changes all the time, because there's the back end is fully pluggable, so you can put in different encryption plugins if you need that. And the other thing I guess I'll note is, even though we have encryption as service, Vault doesn't actually store the encrypted data. It just encrypts it and gives it back to you. So you then, you would ask, for example, you could use transform, which is the form of preserving encryption. Encrypt this credit card. It doesn't store the credit card number. It just feeds you back. Here's the encrypted data.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm hoping that answers the question, but we'll give Lena an opportunity to type more if she wants to know more. Is there, so I clearly I should know this, but you said there's a site. Should we direct Lena to Jim, a site on our HashiCorp.com to find this information?
Yeah, if you take down her contact information, we can follow up with the proper literature.
Perfect. Well, gentlemen, I do not see any more questions in the Q&A or the chat box. So I believe we've effectively addressed everybody's comments and questions. So again, Gabe and Jim, thank you so very much for your time today. And in particular, thank you to all the participants who dialed in. Take care, have a great day, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.